Hey everyone, I hope you're all doing really well. I am so excited for today's video, which is going to be my mid-year makeup inventory check-in. I'm so excited to share this update with you and how all of my numbers are looking now in comparison to what they were looking like at the beginning of 2022. I feel like I'm doing really well with ensuring that I don't bring too much into my collection, so I haven't seen a huge change in my numbers in terms of growth of my collection, which is my ultimate goal, but I'm actually seeing a lot of my categories minimize. And so today I wanted to talk about not only the numbers as they stand, but I want to compare them to January. And then I also want to talk about the products that I've acquired. So whether that be purchases or PR, or even honestly, I did bring some declutters back into my collection, which I'll talk about in my purchasing update for this quarter as well. So I want to talk about those products, what the counts are in each of the categories. I want to talk about the numbers of products that I emptied in each of my categories, as well as the numbers of products that were decluttered in each of these categories. So we're going to be talking some serious stats today, some numbers. So grab a snack. Let's hang out, let's get right on into it. I am so excited. So my first category is primer, and in January I had 7 primers in my collection. I have not acquired any, so there haven't been any purchases or PR or anything that came into my life that I would consider a primer. However, I have emptied one and I did decide to declutter one. So my current number is now at 5 primers in my collection. That feels really good. 2 of those are glowy primers, which are extremely similar to one another. So I would eventually like to bring this number down to maybe 4 or 3, but I am working on it and I'm making sure that my collection is being used pretty evenly. So I'm not upset with that number by any means. I'm really happy to see that number has decreased, and I foresee it also continually decreasing moving forward. The next category is tinted moisturizer. I had 2 at the beginning of this year. I have neither acquired, decluttered, or emptied any, so we're still sitting at the same 2, the exact same 2 products actually, and I foresee that being the case for the rest of this year into maybe next year. I may have to declutter one of them because it is getting a little bit older, the Colourpop one, but that's okay. This is not going to be a category that gets too far out of hand because I'm currently on a base product no buy, like an all complexion product no buy, minus concealer. The next category as well, foundation, is part of that no buy as well. And in January, I did have 8 products in my foundation category. That was a little too large for me. I wasn't really happy with that number, especially considering how slowly I do work my way through foundations. I have, however, acquired one, and I know that I just said I'm on a no buy, but that's one of those products that I recluttered into my collection from a previous declutter. So yes, keep an eye out for my check-in on my makeup purchasing for this year. I still haven't figured out an eloquent name for that series, but keep an eye out for that at the end of this month because I will talk more about that product. You'll see it in the picture as well. I have not emptied any foundations. They take me so long to work my way through, but I did declutter 3 of those foundations from my collection, 3 things that had just been in my life for far too long. I wasn't reaching for them and I wasn't enjoying them on my skin. So currently I have 6 foundations, and I did just talk about it in my products to pan in 2022 video that I want to finish up a sample from Tarte, and then I'm also working on finishing up a Colourpop No Filter Sticks foundation. So by the end of this year, possibly this number could be more like 4, and that would be amazing. But I'm not too concerned about it because I am working through what I have, which feels great. When it comes to concealer and color corrector, I did have 4 products in this category in January, 1 of which was a color corrector, 3 of which were concealers, so that didn't feel too overwhelming by any means. I have since acquired one. It's the cheekbone one, and I have been really enjoying that. I know that is technically a complexion pencil, so you can kind of use it for foundation or for concealer, but I actually did purchase it with the intent of using it as a concealer, so that's how I've categorized it. I did empty 1 concealer as well in my project pan, which is so exciting. I did decide to declutter 1 product from this category, which was the color corrector. So I'm currently sitting at only 3 concealers in my collection. I don't have any color correctors, and that feels totally great by me. I have been rotating through those 3 remaining concealers, and I've been really enjoying all 3 of them. My next category is loose powder. Eventually I'd like to be able to just kind of like merge some of these categories down, but because my numbers used to be a lot more inflated, I broke things up even more. But one day I think I'd like to like make it just like all powders, all tinted moisturizers and foundations, and not have these things so separated. But anyways, this is how it stands right now because this is how the categories were broken down in January. So I had 2 loose powders in my collection at the beginning of this year, totally fine. They were both decent products that I had had for many years and I was looking forward to working my way through. I've not brought any loose powders into my collection because I was so focused on my Too Faced Peach Perfect powder in my project pan. I really wanted to work my way through that, and thankfully that was an empty. And I have not decluttered any of them, so I just have 1 loose powder now remaining in my collection, which feels great. I'm working on that whenever I feel the need to use a loose powder, and I feel totally satisfied with that number as it is. But I definitely can foresee myself using that one up and then just bringing something else in its place and never seeing this category get too large again, because there's just not a need for too many additional loose powders in my collection, or for my own personal needs, I should say. And when it comes to pressed powders, I had 3 at the very beginning of this year. They were the same 3 that I have been talking about in all of my makeup inventories over the last few years. So they have just been hanging on. I have since acquired 1, and that's because I did empty 2 of my pressed powders. So I currently have 2. One of those powders is extremely new to my collection. The other one is very old. I've had it for many years, but I am currently working on it in my project pan. And so this could just be 1 product possibly by the end of this summer. And I think eventually I would like to have 1 that's like a tinted colored kind of pressed powder and 1 that's translucent. So maybe this category will remain at like 2 for the future, but I don't know. We'll see how it kind of plays out for the next few months and what my needs are once I work my way through that one that I'm currently focusing on. For setting spray at the beginning of this year, I had 2. I have neither acquired, emptied, or decluttered any of my setting sprays. I still have the same 2 in my collection. I am very, very close to done with 1 of them, however. It should be done honestly by the end of this month, if not early next month. So that feels so good. That might be down to 1 very soon. For mascara, I started off this year with only 2 mascaras in my life. However, I have acquired 4 mascaras this year. I've already emptied 3, however, and that goes to show that I finished off the initial 2 that I had. I've already finished off 1 that I did bring into my life this year, and so I have 3 that remain in my collection. However, kind of just like the other category that I just spoke about, I have 1 that is very, very close to done, and I may be calling it quits by the end of this month, maybe within the next 2 weeks. So this will be 2 products in this category very soon. With brows, I just lump everything all together. I am not the kind of person that wants to break it down by pomades, pencils, whatever. Just like how I want to eventually do with powders and with my base products, that's what I do with brows. So initially I had 6 at the beginning of this year in January. I have not acquired any. That is one of my no-buy categories for this year, so I haven't purchased any. That feels great. I have emptied 1 brow product so far this year, and so I still have 5. And that is why I am on a brow product no-buy, because they take so long for me to work through. I also have some products that are more long haul products in this category, and so yeah, I foresee that number kind of staying about the same for a while longer. I know adding in a new category kind of messes up my numbers in contrast to the beginning of this year, but I did post on my community tab asking about what I should do with my Danessa Myricks sample pack. It's got 6 blister samples and they're all different colors. I likely can't have them all open at the same time, and many of you suggested that I create a samples category in my collection. So what I used to consider just one single cream blush in my collection has now moved to being 6 samples, and I think this is so much better for me in order to kind of maintain some accountability on myself so that I can see that sample number come down in the future. And it really shouldn't be broken down as one cream blush because there's a shade in there that's more of a liquid highlighter, and then there's another shade that's more of kind of like a liquid bronzer kind of tone. So I have added in a new category to my collection of 6 samples. This is new to my collection now. However, really, if we're looking back at the beginning of this year, I also had 6 samples. I kind of just wanted to get that out of the way before we hop into my cheek product categories. So let's get on into those now. Let's talk about my powder, bronzer, and contour products now. I had 8 of these at the beginning of January. I have not purchased any, I have not emptied any, but I did decide to declutter 3 of the products from this category. So I did declutter my one and only contour product, and I decluttered 2 of my powder bronzers that just were not meeting my needs and wants and preferences. So I currently have only 5 products in this category, and that feels so great. That is a really more attainable or more usable kind of number for me, and I'm really happy with where that stands. I love all the variety of bronzers that I have in my collection. I'm really happy with the way things are looking, and yeah, that just feels so good. Yes, I haven't used up any, but thankfully I haven't purchased any to replace the 3 that I decluttered because I just don't feel the need for more variety in that category. I also have a liquid and cream bronzer category. So I had 3 products in this category at the beginning of this year. I always talk about this one, but I do have a kind of concealer product that I use as a liquid bronzer in my collection. So you'll see on the screen that there is a concealer and then 2 actual bronzers. But I have not purchased any, I have not emptied any, and I have not decluttered anything from this category. So we're still sitting at 3 products in this category. This is a very slow moving category for me. It's really hard for me to use up products in this category. I have not ever in the past. And I'd like to work my way through that concealer in the foreseeable future, I think. It's something that I've been considering kind of bringing into my rotation more often. So I think by my check-in, hopefully at the beginning of next year, we'll see a big difference in this number of one fewer product, hopefully. When it comes to blushes at the beginning of this year, I also had 8 products in this category. These are my powder blushes in pans. I have not purchased any. I have not emptied any, which again, they're long haul products for me, so it's really hard to empty these. However, I did decide to declutter 1 of my blushes from my collection, so I currently have 7 powder blushes in my collection. I'd like to see this number go down in the future, but I'm working towards that, and I'm very accepting of the fact that blushes take a very long time. So as long as I continue on the trajectory where I'm not purchasing anything new, then I should be able to actually feasibly use up what I have eventually, or at least work my way through some of what I have. So for liquid and cream blushes, if you watch my January 2022 video, you'll see that that number was 12. However, let's just say that it was 11 because technically speaking, the sample pack was 1 product from this category. So just for the sake of having the numbers make sense here, let's just say that I had 11 products in this category at the beginning of this year. So I have not purchased any, even though I have been tempted to purchase some for sure. I've not emptied any because they're near impossible to finish up, but I did decide to declutter 2 of them from my collection, 2 that just were not serving me, things that weren't really working for me. So I currently have 9 products in this category, and I'm totally okay with that. I'd like to see that go down eventually, but I'm happy with seeing that number at 9 as it stands. For highlighters, so these are all of my individual pans of pretty much all powder highlighters. I do have a Colourpop Super Shock Shadow in this category, and again, that's just like for consistency's sake from the past. I kept that as an individual pan of highlighter in my collection. But I started out this year with 14 products in this category, and I was definitely overwhelmed by this number. It's just far too many for my face, my preferences, my needs and wants and desires in life. If you want a million highlights or a million products in any of these categories, I am not judging you. I'm just talking about my own personal preferences and needs, but 14 was a little bit too excessive for me. I did not purchase any for that very reason. This product category is also on my no-buy list because I don't need any more. I do not want to overwhelm myself anymore. I have actually emptied one, which is so great. That feels so good. And I did decide to declutter one of them as well. So we're currently looking at 12 individual highlighters in my collection, and that feels okay. I'm happy to see that number going down. I'm happy one is used up. So that's a little bit of progress, and that feels good to me. For highlighter palettes, I like to kind of break this up just so that I can keep myself accountable with palette numbers. So highlighter palettes, I had 3 of them at the beginning of this year. I've not purchased any. I likely will never purchase one again because they're just so much product. I have not emptied any because, again, they're just so much product, and I did decide to declutter one of them, and I'm feeling a lot lighter because of that. So I have 2 highlighter palettes in my collection, and when I look at all of my highlighters from the individual pans, which I have 12 in that category, and then all of my highlighters in my palettes, I have 19 total highlighters in my collection, which is just far too vast for my personal needs. So that is something I really need to keep in mind. I need to keep myself in check with that for sure. And so highlighters are not coming into my life. That's just a fact. They just can't. But with liquid and cream highlighters, I started out this year with 7 products in this category. I talked about it in my declutter that I was considering moving the Auric Glow Lust into my primer category, but just for the sake of consistency, I did keep it into this category. But let me know, what do you think? Do you consider that to be more of a primer kind of product, or is it more of a liquid highlighter? So I've not purchased any products in this category. I have emptied 2 of my liquid highlighters, which feels so, so good. And I did decide to declutter one of my liquid highlighters. So that brings me to, currently I have 5 in my collection. Wait, that would mean 4. That would mean 4 because that's 3 getting reduced from my collection. So I currently do have 5. Let me look at this. Oh, okay, so I just went back. That number should actually have been 8. So that should have been 8 in January. Unfortunately, just through looking at the pictures, I didn't photo my Oma Beauty stick highlighter from the Duo. So that number actually should have been 8 in January, which that adds up now to making it 5 for this time of year. So my apologies for that. That was incorrect when I spoke with you in January. So I had 8 then. I have emptied 2, decluttered 1, and now I have 5 in my collection. For lip liner, I started out this year with 8 in this category, and that was just a little too much for me and my personal needs. I don't use lip liner that much. I don't really find that it makes a huge difference for my own personal preferences. So I put myself on a no buy for lip liners. It just made sense for me, and that's just absolutely necessary. There's no reason for me to have more than 8. In fact, I ended up not purchasing any because of that being a no-buy category. I did not empty any because they take so long for me to use up and to remember to use. But I did decide to declutter 2 that were getting quite old in my collection. I think they were about 6 years old. So now I'm down to 6 lip liners. I would like to work my way through what I have. I don't really want to continuously have to declutter products from most categories, especially this category. So I'd like to work my way through these. I just find lip liner is something that I oftentimes forget to reach for. But I have 6. I don't want to have any more than 6 ever again. For lip gloss and tinted lip balm, this is basically any like sheer lippies. So things that come generally in a tube or in a bullet that are just meant to be like a balm or gloss or lip oil. I had 9 of these at the beginning of this year. This is a category that I love and adore, but shockingly, I have not purchased or acquired anything in this category. I would love to bring some more lip glosses into my life, but I have been working my way through them instead. So I emptied 2 of them this year. I decluttered 1 that was just getting far too old and just wasn't really my preference. So right now I'm sitting at 6 products in this category. I don't mind having this category up to like maybe 10 or something like that, just because I do work my way through them. But I just haven't been having much of an interest in purchasing much of anything these days, so that's why I haven't brought anything new into my life in that category. However, I will tell you, there have been times where I am slightly tempted, but I'm feeling really motivated by seeing like these acquired categories at like 0.0000000. Feels good. Feels really good to me. So I want to keep up with that feeling. For liquid lipsticks, I had 2 at the beginning of this year. I have neither acquired, decluttered, or emptied any of them. So I still have the same remaining 2 in my category, or in my collection rather. And they've been the same 2 for the last little while as well. I oftentimes forget to reach for them. It's just not my preferred lipstick type, but maybe I'll have to move one of them into my project pan so that I can set a usage goal on one of them. That's something I like to keep in mind because I don't want to just leave them unused forever until they expire. But anyways, let's move on to bullet lipsticks. I started up the year with 23 products in this category, which is just way too many for my personal needs and preferences. It was really discouraging after having done my low buy year to see that number still be so high. But I feel like I'm making really great progress on it now. So I did end up actually bringing in 2 new lipsticks so far this year. I'm okay with that. They were 2 really great products and I'm really happy to have them in my collection. And I was able to use up 2 lipsticks already so far this year. So they kind of just like neutralized it. And when I did my declutter, I decided it was time to pass on 4 lipsticks and I do not miss them. They were things that were not really suiting my personal preferences anymore. Things that just were not going to get used anyways. So I'm happy to have decided to part with them. And that number is now at 19, which feels really good to me. And it feels so good to see that I have actually finished up 2 bullet lipsticks as well this year. When it comes to eyeshadow primers, this is such a boring category for me, so it is what it is. I had 3 products in this category at the beginning of this year. I think I have for a while actually, because one is like a tinted liquid eyeshadow, one of them is a clear eyeshadow primer, and the other one is a glitter primer. I've not purchased any, I've not used any up, I have not decluttered any, so we're sitting at the same 3. I am working my way towards trying to finish up one of them in my project pan, and that should be out of my collection sooner rather than later, so that's good. That number will go down to 2, and it should just stay at 2 for a while. For liquid and cream eyeshadows slash glitter liners, this is basically a mishmash kind of category because it just felt silly to break all of these down, but this is liquid eyeshadows, whether they're in like a doe foot applicator or a squeeze tube, cream eyeshadows that are in pots. I used to have my kind of chubby stick liners in here as well, but I have moved them to my eyeliner category. So you'll see a bit of a shift in this category because of that. And I previously did have some glitter liners in my collection. However, I don't purchase products like that anymore. Anyways, I had 8 products in this mishmash category at the beginning of this year. I've not brought anything into this category because it's just not something that I'm super keen to see grow. I'm trying to really enjoy using my eyeshadow palettes instead because they do already have quite a lot of packaging and a lot of variety of textures within them. So I'm trying to not bring any more of those individually potted kind of products into my life anymore. I did empty 1 product from this category, which I'll be talking about in my upcoming empties video, so keep an eye out for that. It will be my May and June empties. I'll chat about that with you. And I have not decluttered any products from this category either. So currently I have 6, even though it only went down by 1, and that's because the Charlotte Tilbury Chubby kind of eyeshadow stick, I moved it to my eyeliners because that's more so how I use it, and I felt like it just made more sense to just move it to there now as opposed to like waiting till the later parts of this year or early next year. I just want to see that properly reflected for my personal needs and preferences. Liquid and gel eyeliners. These are eyeliners in a pot or in a pen kind of form. I had 3 products in this category at the beginning of this year. I've not acquired any, I have not decluttered any, I have not emptied any, so I still have the same remaining 3. One is a brown liquid liner, one is a black liquid liner, and the other one is a mustard colored eyeliner, the one that I'm wearing today, and I don't love that I decided to add it into this look, but anyways, those are the only 3 that I have. So let's chat the pencil eyeliners now. At the beginning of this year, I had 8 products in this category. However, we could technically say that I had 9 because I did shift the Charlotte Tilbury product for today's update. However, as it stood at the time, I had 8 in that category. I have added 2 products into this category as like actual acquisitions, things that have made their way into my life. Both are from Cheekbone Beauty. But you could say that I have 3 that came into this category because of the Charlotte Tilbury, but that's where it starts getting like confusing. So I purchased 2. I have not brought any into my life through PR, but I purchased 2 products in this category. That's all I'm gonna say. I am making it so convoluted for some reason. And then I have emptied 1. I was able to use up one of my eyeliners. However, I did decide to declutter 3 products from this category as well. So currently I'm sitting at 7 items in this category. And I'm very happy with the variety of different types of products and tones that I have in here. So 7 is totally fine by me. So for single eyeshadows, this includes eyeshadows that are like individually packaged or ones that are in just an individual magnetic pan. Anything that's just a standalone eyeshadow, it belongs here. I had 91 products in this category at the beginning of this year, which is quite large, but I love eyeshadow, so I didn't really feel like too concerned about that number. I have brought 1 into this category. That is something that I'll chat about with you in my makeup purchasing video. So yeah, definitely keep an eye out for that so we can chat more about what has come into my life. But I did decide to declutter actually 11 products from this category, and I have successfully finished off just 1, but I did finish 1, so that's exciting for me. So I currently have 80 products in this category. And yes, that is a absolutely massive number, but I feel totally fine with having 80 singles. I'd like to see that number work its way down through actually finishing up my eyeshadows versus decluttering moving forward. And so it will take quite some time to see that category come down, but I love all the variety, so it's totally okay by me as it stands. And then last, but certainly not least, is eyeshadow palettes. I had 20 of them at the beginning of this year. That's kind of like the max at where I'd like to see my collection. I never want to have more than that because I feel like I still have so much variety between all of my liquid shadows, my single shadows, and all my eyeshadow palettes. So I never want to see that kind of surpass that number. I have brought 1 eyeshadow palette into my collection through PR, which is just such a beautiful palette. I did not empty any eyeshadow palettes. I don't know that that would ever happen for me, that I'd ever finish off an eyeshadow palette, but that's okay. And I did end up deciding to declutter 4 eyeshadow palettes that just were not meeting my needs anymore. So I currently have 17 eyeshadow palettes. And I'm very satisfied with the eyeshadow palette collection that I have, being at 17. Like I said so many times, I have endless variety. I feel so satisfied with the selection of palettes that I have. While many of them are older and discontinued, I still get so much love and joy out of using them. I just enjoy them so much. So the 17 palettes that I have will definitely keep me very much satisfied for the next years to come, and I'm totally happy with where that category is at. So that is all of my categories, all the comparisons from last year. So I had collectively 267 products in my makeup collection at the beginning of this year. I think at the beginning of this year, when I did a wrap up at the end of the video, I probably said I had 266 products, and that would be because I didn't realize that the Oma product had not been considered in my liquid and cream highlight category. So 267 products at the beginning of this year. I have since purchased or acquired 13 products and brought those into my collection. So 13 items for all of 2022 so far. I have emptied, however, 19 products so far this year, which is so good. One of my goals for this year is to actually purchase less than I empty. So that is great. I'm keeping on par with that. And I did end up decluttering collectively 39 products from my collection. I did initially declutter 41, and then 2 more things snuck their way back into my life. So you should probably check out my post declutter reflections video if you want to see what I ended up recluttering into my life. But yeah, my number now at this time of year is a great number. I'm feeling really happy. I have collectively 227 items in my collection. And if you remove the samples from that, I actually have 221 products in my collection, which feels so good. I would love to see this number get down to like below 200 eventually, but if I'm realistic with myself, I know that's not gonna happen for me this year, seeing as I finished 19 products so far this year. I don't think I'll be able to finish another 20 items, just given where progress is at for many products in my collection. But maybe early next year or by my mid-year check-in next year, we'll see this number under 200. I don't know. Only time will tell, but I do feel much more motivated and much more satisfied and happy and understanding of my collection this time around, checking in on my inventory, than I did at the beginning of this year. At the beginning of this year, I did feel really overwhelmed seeing that my categories were not dwindling, but I wasn't doing the active work to make sure that no new stuff was coming into my life. So that is why I've been much more diligent to ensure that fewer items come into my life and that I'm actually using up my products as well to make sure that that number really does come down. Declutters definitely help. That's a huge chunk of why my numbers have come down. But I think that's gonna be like my last large scale declutter that I ever do. And I've talked about that in that declutter kind of reflections video. So please check that out. I am rambling at this point, but yeah, let's just wrap it up here. That is absolutely everything for today's video. Thank you so much for watching and for hanging out with me. I hope you enjoyed my inventory, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye everyone.